we're going to draw the center line. Then we're going to draw her head. It should be about even with the second knuckle of your index finger. It should be about even with the knuckle, second knuckle. Okay? It shouldn't be round. No. It should be oval. And the width of her head should be half the height of her head. Okay? The next thing we do is draw 8 heads to follow. Well, 8 heads, so it's going to be 9 heads. So 8 more. So all heads should be about the same height. Okay. The first guideline should be a half a head down from her chin. That's her shoulder. The next line should be half a head down from her shoulder. That's her bust line. The next guideline should be 1 full head down from her bust line. That's her waistline. The next line should be 2/3 of a head down. That's her hip level, the hip line. The next one is 1/3 of a head down from her hip. That's her crotch line. From her crotch line, 2 heads down is her knee. From her crotch line, 2/3 of a head down is her fingertips. And the last line should be her ankle line. Now we're going to connect them. So her shoulders should be about 1.5 heads high. That's the width. Or you can do it 3 heads wide. That should be the widest part. I would say slightly less wide than 3 heads. But it's your prerogative. You guys do what you think it looks right. And that's probably going to be the first adjustment when you have connected your dots. If you have too wide of a head or wide of shoulders, it's an easy fix. But let's connect our dots. Our waist should be just wider than the width of her head, or 3/4 of a head high. So let's connect the dots. We're going to draw a guideline down from her shoulders all the way to her crotch line. This guideline is going to be used for her arms, but also the width of her hips. So her hips should be just slightly narrower than that guideline. And we're going to drop a line straight down to her crotch line. Connect her waist to her hip. Her knees should be just wider than the width of a head. should be even to her waist. And her ankles should be as wide as the width of her head. We're going to connect from the crotch line down to her knee on both sides. And then down to her ankle. We're going to come back up. At crotch level, we're going to draw a thicker line. It's going to be this wide. I'm going to say it, especially for the recording. I don't want to see a box. Shouldn't be this thick. It shouldn't be a package. There shouldn't be a bump. There's no curve. And especially no point. Even if she's wearing tight pants, there's still going to be a flat space. Then from either side of that crotch line, we're going to connect to her ankles, which is going to be pretty close to the center line. I would say probably anywhere from halfway from the ankle line to a quarter of the way from the ankle line. And connect the dot. Okay? Her feet, we did, can you just show that up there? We did this lesson yesterday. So her ankles, draw the floor. You should extend the inside, the interior line to about a quarter of the way from the floor up. And the outside of her ankle goes on a slant on both sides. Then we draw a bulge to represent the toes. We're going to come back up. We're going to connect her neck or her head to her shoulder line. So her neck should be not as wide as her head. Anywhere from halfway up to about a quarter. I prefer a quarter, but it's your artistic prerogative. We're going to connect her shoulders to her neck. Now yesterday we did the shoulder joint, which was a circle. This is just to add a softer line for her shoulder. So this will help her draw in her bicep, the tone of her bicep. We're going to put her elbow at waist level and draw a dot on either side for the width of her elbow. Her wrist should be lined up with her crotch line. And again, thinner than her elbow, a dot to show where we're going to connect the lines. So coming from her shoulder, the rounded line to her elbow, slightly rounded, don't go crazy, and then down to her wrist on both sides. The inside of her arm starts at the bust line, and we draw to her elbow, and then down to her hip. I'm just drawing paddle arms. That's okay for now. And so the last thing that we're going to do is soften her arms. Soften her lines. I recommend using a marker, it's easier. So on all the lines that we want to see, not the guidelines, we're going to draw in with marker. We're going to soften all the lines. So add a little bit of a curve. It should be concave. It shouldn't go up. Don't draw shoulders like that. Her arm should be soft lines down like that. So it should be a concave line. Come around and soften her shoulder. Her muscles on the outside are going to be higher than those on the inside. Okay? So on her forearm, same thing. It's going to be a little bit of a bulge on the outside, higher, and on the inside, it's going to be a little bit lower. And the same thing on both sides. Higher on the outside, lower on the inside. At her bust, about a third of the way up from her armhole or her underarm is where her bust comes in. Don't make it rounded outward. It just comes in a slight C curve. Come in slightly from underneath her bust and then connect the waist. Soften those lines to the hip. At her hip level, her thigh is going to be just a little bit more rounded close to her hip. So it's going to bulge a little bit by her hip and then come in towards her knee. I like to draw a little bit of a line underneath her knee just to show that it comes in a little bit so that there's a little dimension. On the inside of her leg, about mid-thigh is where it bulges, and then it comes in. So it's going to be about straight from the crotch to about mid-thigh, and then it comes in a little bit. Then her calf bulges higher on the outside and comes down to the ankle, and lower on the inside and then comes into the ankle. Her ankles, the bone should bulge at the ankle line on the outside and below the ankle line just slightly. You should start at the ankle line but bulge just slightly on the inside, lower than that line. And then we just draw in our feet.
Wait, they can't see up there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And we just draw in our feet, and that's our girl. Okay? We're going to use our marker paper to change her pose so that, and all we're going to do is we're going to trace along these lines that we just did. These are our guidelines, and she's going to suddenly have a different pose. Okay? So the basic girl is going to be the base of all of our other poses. Okay?